Bien, mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen,
merci beaucoup
dear President, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Avec le président du
President,
Chili, vous
the President of Chile and I
les fruits d'une initiative menée
would like to
ensemble ces
present
derniers
to
jours.
you an initiative that we've been working on over the
D'une
course
part,
of recent
en tant
days.
que président et puissance
Now,
haute
as the
la
President,
prochaine COP,
as well
en fin
as
d'année,
the
le Chili
lead
s'est
in the
fortement engagé
upcoming
sur les
COP
sujets
meeting
climatiques
in
en tant
Chile,
que,
Chile has been
justement,
very involved in
la région
climate
invitée
issues. And
à
in
ce
fact,
G7,
that was
et la
the
France, en
reason
tant que
why
présidente du
we would
G7
like to, we wanted
cette
to
année.
invite him
En
here
effet,
at the
face aux
G7
incendies
in
qui
France,
ravagent
whilst holding
l'Amazonie,
the
nous devions de
presidency.
réagir,
Now
nous
we
l'avons fait dès
see
les
what is
premières
happening
heures,
in the Amazon, and
pour
we
une
would like
raison
to be able to
très
respond
évidente.
to these
L'Amazonie,
ravages,
c'est
and
le
we did
poumon de
this
la
from the
planète,
very outset.
et les
For a good reason.
conséquences
The Amazon
sont
is the lung of the
absolument
planet,
dramatiques
and
de
the
ce qui est en train de
consequences
se
are
passer. Donc le G7 s'est tout de
extremely
suite mobilisé avec
dire for the
une
planet.
discussion
That is why we
approfondie dès
undertook
samedi
an
soir.
in-depth discussion
Les
on the subject
incendies
as of
aujourd'hui
Saturday
frappent
night.
plusieurs
The
pays. Il y a au
fires
total
are
9
affecting
pays, dont la France,
9 countries in
en
total,
Amazonie. Plusieurs
including
pays sont
France.
frappés. Les
Many
incendies
countries
couvrent
indeed have
aujourd'hui
been
une
affected,
superficie
and the surface
d'1,2 million de
areas is
kilomètres
about
carrés, soit 2 fois la superficie de la
two
France
times
métropolitaine,
the surface area of France.
qui est un drame évidemment pour
So
les
we
pays
know how
concernés,
dramatic this
mais
is
pour
for the
l'humanité tout
countries,
entière.
but for humanity
Je
as
veux
a
juste rappeler
whole.
ici les chiffres.
I wanted to just remind you a few figures.
L'Amazonie
The Amazon
emmagasine 14% du
stocks
CO2 mondial.
14% of the
Et
world's
donc, la
CO2.
perte du premier poumon
So
de la
were we
planète,
to
c'est un
lose
problème mondial.
the top
Aucun pays ne peut
lung
dire
of the
que ça
planet
ne le
would be
concerne seul, même si chaque pays
disastrous,
doit être
and we
respecté
know
dans sa
that
souveraineté.
all countries are
Il est
affected.
impossible de
Of course, we
compenser le
must
rôle de
respect the
l'Amazonie
sovereignty
en la
of each
matière.
country.
Et n'oublions pas
We
qu'en
need
matière
to,
de
we
destruction de
underscore
forêt,
the
celle-ci rejette
importance
dans
of the
l'atmosphère
Amazon, and
le
the
carbone
deforestation means that
préalablement emmagasiné,
carbon
ce qui veut dire
is
que ce qui est
being
en train
emitted
de se
into
passer
the atmosphere,
a en
which
plus
is
des
precisely
conséquences
what is happening,
négatives en
and
termes
that has
d'émissions de CO2.
very
C'est un peu la
negative
double peine
consequences
que nous
on
sommes en train de
CO2 emissions, meaning
Comme je
that
le disais, la
the
France est
problem is
particulièrement
twofold.
touchée par ce
France
drame,
is
d'abord
very
parce
much
que nous
affected
sommes
by
un
this.
pays
Why?
amazonien.
Because we
J'ai eu
are
plusieurs
a
échanges
country
avec le
with
président Rodolphe
territory
Alexandre en la matière, qui est pleinement
in the Amazon, and in
impliqué
fact,
et
I
engagé
had a
dans
chance
notre
to discuss
initiative.
specifically
Ensuite, parce
with
que nous sommes en
our
première
territory
ligne
leaders
sur
there,
la question du
and we
changement
are at the
climatique.
forefront in this
Aussi,
area when it
avec le
comes to
président
the
chilien,
issues
comme je le
related
disais, qui est
to climate
invité au
change. Now,
G7,
Mr.
mais aussi
President
président de la
Piñera
prochaine
will
conférence
be
climat, nous avons
holding the
décidé de
upcoming climate
mobiliser
conference,
le G7
and
pour
that is
répondre à la
why we
crise.
wanted to bring the
Le président va
G7
présenter en
into
détail
the
le
finding
plan
of a
qui
solution.
ressort de
The President
notre
will
travail.
present the plan that has emerged from our work.
Nous offrirons
But
aux pays
first and
amazoniens qui
foremost,
nous
we
font
would like to
connaître leurs
announce
besoins
that the Amazon
un soutien
countries that would
financier,
like to
au moins à hauteur de 20 millions d'euros, et aussi avec des
inform us
soutiens
of their
concrets. La
needs,
France
we
le
would
fera
make
d'ailleurs avec
available
des soutiens
20
militaires
billion
dès les prochaines heures
euros, and
dans la
there will
région.
be military wherewithal
Dans
that
le
will be
mois qui
brought to
vient,
these countries in the upcoming hours.
nous
In the
construirons
months
une
to come,
initiative
we are
pour
going to
l'Amazonie
be developing an
qui sera
initiative for the
officiellement
Amazon,
lancée
and that is going
lors
to
de
be
l'Assemblée
launched
générale
officially at the
de
General
l'Organisation des
Assembly
Nations
of the
Unies.
United Nations.
Cette initiative
This
sera
initiative
lancée
will
avec tous
be
les pays
launched
de la région.
in
Elle
concert
traitera des
with all
questions
of the
centrales
countries
pour
in
l'avenir de
the
l'Amazonie,
region. We
bien
are going to
sûr de
look
la
at the focal
reforestation des
issues
territoires
of the
dévastés,
area, so the
mais aussi des
reforestation
projets
of the area
concrets
that
qui
has been
devront se faire
affected,
en accord
as well as
et
tangible
pour le
projects
bien
that
des
will be
populations locales,
undertaken in
le
agreement
développement durable
and in
et
consultation
l'agroécologie.
with the
Il nous faudra
local
donc travailler
populations,
avec tous les États de la région,
with
avec les
agriculture,
régions
and of course
et États fédérés
with all of the environmental issues. We're going to be working
différents
with all of the
gouverneurs pour
various
les
governors
États qui ont une
in
structure
the
fédérale,
states that have a
avec
federal
également
structure.
l'ensemble des
Moreover,
acteurs
we will be
locaux
working with
et des
all of the
populations
local
indigènes. C'est tout ce travail
populations,
nous allons nous
indigenous
atteler à finaliser dans les
populations, and
prochaines
local
semaines
authorities.
pour que
These are the things that we are going to be
cette alliance
fine-tuning in the
collective, ce
upcoming
travail et
weeks.
cette initiative pour
This is an
l'Amazonie
initiative for the Amazon,
pour les
and we
prochaines
want to
années
make sure
pleinement
that it will be
finalisées. Un
something
mot
that will
aussi pour dire que
will
nous
enter into
suivons
full
avec
force in
beaucoup
the upcoming
d'attention
years
ce qui est en train de se passer
and
en
be
Afrique. Et nous avons un échange sur ce point avec
fleshed
le
out.
président
Also,
de
we
l'Union
know what
africaine
is
et plusieurs
happening
pays.
in Africa
La
as
forêt
well.
brûle
In
aussi en
the
Afrique, au Congo.
we've been speaking
Et
with the
donc nous sommes en
president of
train
the African
d'examiner la
Union. We know
possibilité de
that
lancer une
that
initiative
there are fires burning there as
similaire
well, and we therefore
pour
hope
le
to
continent
launch a
africain.
similar
Président
initiative,
Piñera, cher Sébastien.
along the same
Bonjour,
lines for
Emmanuel,
Africa as
merci
well.
beaucoup.
President
The
Piñera,
Amazon zone
dear
covers
Sebastian.
7 million square kilometers. It represents more than 50% of the rainforest of the world. It captures almost 1/4 of all the carbon that is stored on Earth, and is a magnificent and a miracle of diversity and a tremendous oxygen machine producer. For that, we need to protect that zone because it's the real lungs of our planet. And the Amazon zone is suffering from very very difficult priors. That's why we have put together with the G7 group and with the collaboration of Chile plan that will be implemented in 2 steps. The first one is to cover the emergency and collaborate with the Amazonian countries in fighting the fires that are destroying part of the rainforest of the Amazonia. And for that, we have put together a budget of 20 million euros or dollars. Dollars. You said euros.
This is true.
$20 million.
I even put it more.
To help the Amazonian countries, Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Paraguay, to fight and combat these forest fires. And for that they need, and with urgency, brigades specialized in combating fires and also specialized planes to fight those fires. That will be the first stage that will be implemented immediately. The second stage, which will be agreed with the Amazonian countries in the context of the United Nations General Assembly in September in New York, will be to collaborate with the Amazonian countries, of course always respecting their sovereignty, in implementing a second phase to protect those forests, to also protect diversity, biodiversity, and also to reforest that zone of the world. That second step will be possible because of the collaboration between the Amazonian country and the G7 country. We think that we have to protect these real lungs of our world. And that's why I'm very happy that we have been able to reach an agreement and go in support of those countries immediately and to implement a longer-standing strategy in the next General Secretary, UN General Secretary Assembly in New York.
Merci beaucoup, Président.
Thank you very much,
Est-ce qu'il y a des
President.
questions?
Would there be any questions from the room?
Ça va? C'est Martha de l'agence EFE.
From AF. From Chile, as the host country of the COP25 and as a Latin American country, I was wondering, did the G7 ask Chile to play any specific role in terms of the Amazon, or will there be any new priorities for the summit in December? And how do you two interpret the fact that Trump did not participate in the biodiversity session this morning? And what do you think that might mean in terms of the United States and the Paris Agreement?
Sur ces deux questions,
On these two questions, I'd like to answer. Well, the President was invited specifically because he's one of the democratic countries at the forefront in the region, and because currently he is planning the COP conference that will be organized for December. And so one of the 4 countries that was invited in the for the second half of this G7 meeting. And also, President Piñera played an important role in putting together this Amazon Alliance. First, because power in the region, and also because he was in contact with all of the heads of state and government in the region. We had a long discussion on Saturday night, as I said, and the consensus that emerged from this in the G7 was that we were all in agreement that we should act, but we all wanted this to be done in full coordination with the countries of the region. And President Piñera has taken this role of defining specifically what we will be doing and formalizing this initiative come September. On the second question, President Trump had several bilateral meetings, including with Chancellor Merkel and Prime Minister Modi this morning, and that meant that he wasn't in the room, but his team was there. When it comes to the Paris Agreement, we know his position. It's always been clear, and it is not an objective of the French presidency to convince him otherwise. We did have that objective at the outset prior to withdrawing from the agreement. But he has undertaken to withdraw from the Paris Agreement vis-à-vis his voters. And at the G7, we did not have the objective in sight to try to convince him to return to the agreement. Having said that, I spoke at length with President Trump about the situation in the Amazon. And he shares the objectives that I have, and that I think have been fleshed out in this initiative. He spoke with President Bolsonaro and a number of other presidents from the region, and so there's agreement on putting out the fires as well as reforesting, and he undertook to that fully Saturday night. We had a long discussion on that now. In addition to that, the G7 meant that we were able to move forward on a number of different initiatives, and at the time of the conclusions, we made great progress that I will share with you at that time. Now, when it comes to the climate,
en marge du sommet des Nations Unies de septembre, mais pour financer justement les transitions nécessaires à la mobilisation
at the UN General Assembly, we will be working on the financing of the climate transition. All of the countries that we have been working with, including those who are not members of the G7, all of the countries, including Chile, Australia, India, South Africa, will be signing the chart, the biodiversity chart. Now, this is the first of its kind. It was put together it's been worked on over the course of recent months. It's the result of the IPBES, and it shows that the international community is committed to biodiversity. So what we are going to focus now on is putting together the dynamic that we need to protect biodiversity, much like we have done for climate change. There will be the conference in Marseille, and then, of course, there's going to be the CBD conference in China. Then, during the summit, we worked on coalitions amongst important actors, so carbon neutrality. President Piñera and I announced that an increasing number of countries are getting involved, including India, that are undertaking carbon neutrality by 2050. This really strengthens the commitments and undertakings, even vis-à-vis the Paris Agreement. Now, on this subject, I should like to be extremely clear. The entire international community is really working to strengthen and bolster their initiatives. Now, we know that there was the withdrawal of the Paris Agreement, but on the sidelines of that, others are strengthening their undertakings, including Russia. President Putin even confirmed this to me just 1 week back to the date. India also has joined the carbon coalition, which is something that we didn't know would be the case even a week ago. So 2 key countries for the climate coalition that have undertaken great commitments over the course of recent weeks, and I would also like to point out that we have a very important declaration that has been entered into with China to move in that direction as well. So the Carbon Neutrality Coalition, and I'll also be talking to you about more initiatives later, as well as the biodiversity charter. And we shouldn't interpret the fact that Trump was not present at the meeting to mean anything more than the fact that he had bilaterals with other partners. And we know exactly what his feelings are, his commitment to the Amazon undertaking, and we know his position on the Paris Agreement.
In this G7 summit are very significant, very urgent, and very important, and President Macron has explained the most important ones. I would like just to emphasize that I've been in touch with many Amazonian country presidents in order to put together this initiative to help the Amazonian country to combat these fires and at the same time to structure this long-term strategy. In December of this year, we will host in Chile the next COP, and it's a very important one. Our main targets are, first of all, we need that countries come with more ambitious and more enforceable commitments. One of the commitments that we would like to emphasize is that we have to commit to become carbon neutral by 2050. That's a must. We need it. Second, and very important target is to put to work the carbon bonds that will allow us to use market tools to reduce even further and more efficiently all greenhouse gases emissions. Third, we want to introduce the ocean as a key part of our fight over climate change and global warming. We need to protect our ocean, but we are not protecting them now. That's why we want to call the COP in Chile the Blue COP, because without blue there is no green, without green there is no life. And the fourth target is to introduce also the protection of the South and North Poles, the Antarctic and the Arctic, because a good part of this battle will be fought in the poles. Those are the 4 targets that we want to achieve in the Blue COP in Chile in December. And of course, President Macron, you are most welcome to attend.
Thank you, President. On prend une deuxième question.
Another question.
Monsieur le Président, pour la route du quotidien,
à
qui appartient l'Amazonie? Le président Bolsonaro dit que à lui, vous
says that the Amazon is his. You, President Macron, you say there is a part that is French as well. So what would you be able to do concretely to put out the fires and to begin reforestation? Mr. President Macron, what do you think about the private attacks on you by President Bolsonaro? And then what could you tell us about the surprise that took place yesterday that the foreign minister from Iran came here, and could you, what could you say to us about that? And what is the message that you are sending to President Bolsonaro by having brought Rouhani here?
C'est un chef aussi, mais c'est pas lui qui est là.
Rouhani, well, he's also a leader, but he wasn't. That wasn't who was here. Would you like to answer the question on Amazon?
Simple. Of course, there are 9 Amazonian countries, including France, that have sovereignty over that region. And that's a huge responsibility. But at the same time, we are fully aware that the Amazonian zone is key for the health of the whole world. So instead of confronting us in terms of those issues, we have to collaborate. That's why we are so happy that in this case, we have been able to reach an agreement by which the Amazonian countries, respecting the sovereignty, will be part of this initiative, and we will collaborate with them in order to combat and fight these forest fires, and at the same time help and collaborate with them in putting together a medium and long-term strategy to better protect those rainforests, that huge and magnificent biodiversity, and at the same time start a process of reforestation.
Sur vos 3 questions.
On your questions, the first.
L'Amazonie est une forêt qui se répartit donc entre 9 États. Et donc, juridiquement parlant, chaque État est souverain.
9 countries. Each country is sovereign, of course, and I would like to reiterate that. Each country has its own rules. There are some countries that are federal states where the regions have an extremely important role to play.
Le ministre des Affaires étrangères, Jean-Yves Le Drian, s'est rendu
The foreign minister, Mr. Le Drian, went to Brazil in July and had a chance to meet with several governors that are very involved in these issues. And the Brazilian army has always been very involved in protecting the forest that is of utmost importance to the country. So I don't think we should try to take the Brazilian position and distill it down to one single point of view. Every state has its own powers and remit. We must respect that. And so what we're going to have to do between now and the UN General Assembly is to really build this initiative that would reforest the Amazon, that would respect the sovereignty of every country, the role of the regions as well. So when it comes to France, Guyana will be extremely involved, and President Alexandre and I have been in close contact, and that is why and also there will be the role of the federal states, as well as the of Brazil, and the indigenous people that have been living there for millennia. So we know the importance of their role, the role that they will inevitably have to play in this process, of course. Now, when it comes to associations, NGOs, some legal organizations also have been raising the question of whether or not the forest might be considered have an international statute. International status. So it's a question that we're raising. If there would be some way to take some concrete measures in the case where there is something that is of such great importance to the entire planet. And I know that President Piñera had a chance to speak with President Bolsonaro, and we have to, and we know that it hasn't run along those lines necessarily. We must be very respectful of these positions, and it is not the direction that we will be taking today, but I think it is an open question, and it is one that is going to continue to be discussed in upcoming years. we can see precisely what the stakes are when it comes to the climate. And what I said in the introduction, well, it's not just my problem, and that is the case for so many countries that have glaciers, for example, that is going to have a global impact. So on this specific initiative, we have built it such that it would, one, respect the sovereignty of each country, and two, include all of the stakeholders in the Amazon. When it comes to Mr. Bolsonaro and his ministers and their comments, well, I have no comment. I respect every single leader as elected by his or her people, and I think that is extremely important. Now, what I observe is that there well, I can say that I spoke with the President Bolsonaro, and he said that he would do everything to be able to protect the Amazon, to be able to sign the Mercosur trade deal and to be a part of the Paris Agreement. Then his mind was changed. And again, his mind was changed at a second point. Then the minister had his statements. It would never happen in France where there would be a minister who would insult another leader. And he actually insulted my wife. And I think this is extremely sad. It is sad for him and for Brazilians. I believe that Brazilian women must be ashamed of their president when they read these things, and I think they must be ashamed of this type of behavior on behalf of their president. And I have much friendship and respect for the Brazilian people, so I do hope that they will have a president in the very near future who will be up to the role that is required by his office. When it comes to Rani, there was an invitation by an NGO, and that is why he is present here in France. No G7 country invited him here, nor did France. Now, if there were a request for a meeting, I would be happy to meet, but it wasn't a request of the French presidency for him to be here. President Macron, could I perhaps say something in Spanish? Please. We are extremely pleased to see that we have an agreement with the countries of the Amazon, Brazil, Peru, Bolivia, Paraguay, and many more. And also that the G7, the most industrialized economies of the world, to work together with the Amazon countries to fight the wildfires, the forest fires in the Amazon. 7 million square meters of surface area and represents 50% of the rainforests around the world and is a sink for a quarter of carbon CO2 emissions, and it is of such great importance, therefore. That is, and we know that it is the responsibility of the countries that are located on the Amazon forest, but it is important to the whole world. So the first thing is we'll put into place a two-step process. One, that there will be means made available to fight the fires in this first phase when they most need it. And then there will be a second phase in the General Assembly in September in the United Nations when we're going to bring together all of the countries of the Amazon and the G7 countries with the coordination of Chile so that we can better coordinate the protection of rainforests in the Amazon, protect biodiversity, and launch the process of reforestation. These are the main objectives that we are undertaking with respect for the sovereignty of these countries in the Amazon, all the while coordinating to be able to protect the well-being of our planet as a whole. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and we're going to be going back in for more discussions. I fully agree with what you said, and I just listened to you carefully, sir.